Board members and superintendent, we'll go through each item on the agenda as we normally do, and if there's something that you'd like to discuss or have a question about, please just stop me. I'll try to go fast, but I'll try to pause and see if I can catch you out of my peripheral vision, and if not, just speak up, okay? All right, so of course the first item is called to order. Second item would pertain to agenda changes, and we have a couple. 2.1 changes will be administrative personnel appointments. Deleted item 5.1, the appointment of a director, ESE, Exceptional Student Education and Student Services, at the request of Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources. And on the consent agenda, correction to item 8.10, deletion of notice of intent document attached to the memorandum of understanding between the Okaloosa County School District and the I Love You Guys Foundation at the request of Mr. Steve Horton, Assistant Superintendent, MIS. And so that takes us now to Section 3, recognitions. We have none. Section 4, visitors. We have none. Then moving to Section 5, administrative and personnel appointments. I've already read the item that was deleted, 5.1, appointment of Director, Exceptional Student Education and Student Services, recommended by the superintendent. Moving on to 5.2, appointment of the principal, Riverside Elementary School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. 5.3, appointment of assistant principal to Mary Esther Elementary School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. 5.4, appointment of assistant principal to Lewis School, recommended by the superintendent for approval. And then 5.5, appointment of assistant principal to Lewis School, recommended by the superintendent for approval.
And Dr. White?
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Hale will have each of the recommendations to you all today with the bios today in the afternoon. I think he's already sent you a little bit of information, but he'll have those to you today.
All right. Very good.
I wanted to ask one thing,
Sure.
or just really make a clarification. If you're looking at that, it looks like it's a kind of a misprint in the sense that it's the two things, but one, let's clarify, is a 10-month position, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And the other one is a 12-month.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's going with what we had already, the new plan of having 10-month assistant principals, correct?
It goes with the staffing pattern.
Yes, exact. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evanche. All right, so moving on to public comment. Item 6.1, members of the public desiring to address the school board. We don't yet know, but we might anticipate some. Section 7, committee and staff reports, workshop only. 7.1, in-county travel paid for the period of May 9th through the 22nd, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. And then 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of May 9th through the 22nd, 2019, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. Moving on there to consent agenda, Section 8. 8.1 will be the approval of the consent agenda. 8.2, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of May 17, 2019, minutes of the workshop meeting of May 23, 2019, minutes of the regular meeting of May 28, 2019. 8.3, invoices to be approved for payment, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.4, school donations, presented by Mrs. Rita Scallon, Chief Financial Officer, and recommended by the superintendent. 8.5, renewal of tag-on annual purchase agreement for indefinite quality environmental contracting services, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.6, exempted purchase over $25,000, Heartland, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.7, exempted purchase over $25,000, Frontline Education, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.8, amended interlocal agreement for emergency shelters between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and the Board of County Commissioners of Okaloosa County, Florida, presented by Mr. Steve Horton, Assistant Superintendent, MIS, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Horton?
Yes,
I'm seeing this, I'm sorry if I didn't pick up on it, but how many shelters do we actually use in our school buildings? How many are used?
Well, there's far more that they could use than they actually have in the past. And obviously, as you can imagine, the north end of the county is where we would identify shelters. So the first on the list is Davidson, followed by Shoal River and Riverside, and then Antioch would be on that. And so at this point, the county doesn't foresee needing more than that. They have other arrangements too, but there's a sufficient number from their standpoint for what we might need to be able to do.
And when that happens, I know we work with the emergency management when that happens. So when that call comes out, is that pretty much we release that school over to them and the Red Cross and so forth?
Well, historically, perhaps, but we always have our administrator on scene, and so going forward, the Red Cross is not actually involved in the operations of the shelter any longer.
Okay.
And that was a decision made, I think, at the national level. But the county and county employees would work with our school district employees to run those shelters. So we've actually had our principals and some staff, key staff and custodial, already attend shelter training this spring to be ready for the hurricane season, which, as you know, started last weekend, I think. Steve Anderson in food service is also plugged in, and so we provide food when that happens. And of course, school, if those shelters are open, then school is not. So it's important then that we've got the folks trained and ready to work in. But it's a partnership this year between the county and county employees and school district employees. And again, if anyone's interested, the folks can get reimbursed and paid for working those shelters, but that does not come through school district funds. And I'm sure Ms. Scallon could speak to that more, but it comes through reimbursement.
What about law enforcement at these shelters?
So the sheriff's office staff is a part of every one of those meetings that lead into these shelter agreements, and so there will be sheriff's deputies at every shelter that's opened that's a school district shelter.
That's great. That supports our administrative staff
ma'am.
there. Yeah.
Yes,
Great.
ma'am.
Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Orr.
And I just had one other comment, a question to ask too. Is it, I knew that the Red Cross wasn't going to be handling the situation just because of how chaotic it could be sometimes when you open up a shelter and then everybody trying to coordinate everything. But I know because there was an issue at Davidson with a particular person who was in the shelter. Now, are we using the Raptor system to help identify
Yes, sir.
those?
So the sheriff's office is there, and we have those identification systems up front.
Right.
And so, first and foremost, I'm pleased that the sheriff's deputies will be there over and above any other folks. And of course, we do those screenings and make sure that our security is in place.
And board members, the contract itself requires that no shelter be open before law enforcement has arrived to be on scene. So the contract requires that there be law enforcement or school safety officers present at the shelter before it opens.
I think that's all. Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Orr.
sir.
All right, moving on to 8.9, School Food Service 2019 Equipment Grant Assistance Application presented by Mr. Stephen Anderson, Program Director, Food Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.10, Memorandum of Understanding between the Okaloosa County School District and the I Love You Guys Foundation presented by Mr. Danny Dean, Specialist, School Safety, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.11, Affiliation Agreement between Crestview Rehabilitation Center and the Okaloosa County School District for the Allied Health Program at Crestview High School, presented by Mrs. April Branscombe, Program Director, Career and Technical Education, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Dr. White. Real quick, I think this is a great agreement that we have because I believe the students actually can get to go work over at the Rehabilitation Center, if I'm correct. And Ms. Tu is here from Crestview High School.
Yes, Ms. Branscombe asked me to be here in her stead today. Yes, this agreement will allow our year 3, our senior level students to intern at this facility in various settings, depending upon their career interests. And this is similar to the agreement that we currently have in place with North Okaloosa Medical Center that we've been using for the last 2 years, where our students will go there and intern in the ER and on the second floor and in radiology and so on and so forth.
And it's awesome that, we do have business partners with the hospital and Crestview Rehabilitation Center where these students can actually go and get, interns while they're still in high school.
Yes, it is an amazing opportunity. Mhm.
About how many students are involved in this?
This year we had 43 students in our
Great.
year 3 class. Next year we're going to have around, well, we're trying to pare it down to about 60. We have more than that right now with requests, but we're culling through those names because we can't accommodate that many students.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to plug Dr. McKenzie there for doing such a wonderful job.
This
with that
program is amazing because of her initiative and her direction and her leadership and her talent and her knowledge, her wealth of knowledge that she shares with those students. And then now we've brought Ms. Myers on board, who is a registered nurse, and she's going to be doing a second level. In the past, we've had just one course for those year 3. It's always been the emergency medical responder certification. This year, we're going to separate that into clinical nursing and emergency medical responder because we've added Ms. Myers to the program, so they're going to have even more options, and this Crestview Rehabilitation Center will help that nursing program specifically.
And board members, if you ever in Crestview High School, they will take you in there and give you a grade.
Oh, yes.
You can
Oh,
actually
yes.
sit in on the class and see what's going on,
Mhm.
so.
It's very
That's pretty
interesting.
cool. Thank you.
All right.
All right, thank
thanks.
you, Mr. All right, moving on to 8.12, Title I, Part A, Florida Department of Education Project Application for 2019-2020, presented by Ms. Amy Dale, Title I, 9 Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.13, Title IX, Part A, Florida Department of Education Project Application for 2019-2020, presented by Ms. Amy Dell, Title I, 9 Specialist, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. 8.14, Title III, Language Instruction for English Language Learners, Preliminary Project Application, presented by Ms. Lisa Tucker, ESOL TSA, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. All right, so now moving on to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1, Employees on Administrative Leave, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.2, Deferred Retirement Option Program Drop, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources. 9.3, Personnel Recommendations, presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Yes,
I'd
ma'am.
like to have Dr. Hale come up and just kind of give us a little briefing on how the Teach at the Beach went.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm happy to do that. I was there. It was a great day. And of course, we've actually have a newspaper article, and our website, okaloosaschools.com, has a nice synopsis of what went on that day. But it was great. All the different schools had a table set up and had representatives there recruiting for their positions. I know that we had many more applicants than we had last year. We had over 200 that actually applied. However many showed up, I didn't get a good head count of that, but we had a lot of people there. A lot of hiring on the spot. I think I read in the newspaper 15 or so actually hired on the spot, but I know that a lot more than that left with commitments, and a lot of the candidates were trying to balance one against the other side, best fit and things like that. We still have a lot of work to do with our hiring this summer, but the hiring fair is a great way to put a good face on our various schools all in one location, and the principals and the representatives did a great job, and the candidates seemed very excited. I feel like it was a very successful event. A lot of connections were made that day.
Great, thank you. That sounds good.
I just would like to comment, just to be lighthearted about the whole situation. It kind of reminded me, and I think I said this last year, it was like the NFL draft. I think we should have a draft board up there to kind of see who's going where, because there's a lot of, lobbying out there. You see the principals out there, oh, come down here to my school, my school. And I also want to thank Jeff Palmer for not letting me feel left out when I was there, because my wife insisted that I dressed the part for Teach at the Beach with the shorts and the nice beach shirt.
You looked great.
And Jeff helped me out there, because when I saw Mr. Chambers, he was dressed really nice, and as he should as superintendent, but Jeff made me feel good by wearing the part. So, but it was a good turnout, and I thought.
And I was very, very pleased, and I would be remiss if I didn't point towards Lindsay Maxey, Mandy Jeter, and the rest of the HR department. This being the third time we've done this, the systems were flawless. They carried their responsibilities out perfectly. There were minimal problems. Things that did arise, we were able to to handle on the spot and things like that. That's a great group that I'm blessed to work around. They set up the systems very nicely and just let me show up and smile and shake hands, and it's a great thing. They do a great job, so I just like to acknowledge them as well.
Terrific, yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
And I'd like to add really quickly,
Yes, sir.
Dr. White, so it's interesting when you go and take part in this event. So like Dr. Hale said, the tables, fantastic the way that they're set up. The union had a table there as well. There were some banks that were there as well. So a lot of information there for the teachers. Was able to talk to them ahead of time in the auditorium. And so I did a little quick poll and I said, how many of you also have ESE certification? And about half of them or more raised their hand as well. So it was also interesting as you watch the principals look at resumes, assistant principals get together, they put their heads together, then they would try to, well, I'll just say it this way, there was some healthy competition going on for candidates. So it was a fantastic event. I just echo the sentiments. Dr. Hale and his group did an absolutely fantastic job running this.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you. All right, so moving on to 9.4, employment separations presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.5, employee transfers presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.6, employee suspension presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.7, leave without pay presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent. 9.8, reimbursement, reinstatement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination presented by Dr. Lee Hale, Assistant Superintendent, and recommended by the Superintendent. Section 10, discussion agenda. There at this time, no items moved from consent. Section 11, construction program owners representatives business. Should Mr. Destin have a report, he can certainly give that to us Monday evening. Section 12, information technology seat management contract, 12.1 CACI task order number 2-131 for installation of data drops at Shoal River Middle School, room 601, presented by Mr. Dustin Keith, specialist, seat management, and recommended by the superintendent. Yes, sir, Mr. Bryant.
Dustin, what 601? Where is that room located at in Shoal River? Is that a classroom or? I'm trying to just visualize it in my head where.
Yes, sir. It's a classroom, and it is a dual-purpose classroom. It's both a CTE room, and they use it for robotics and Lego
I know.
stuff
It
like
used to
that.
be
So
the,
they've kind
carpentry
of spread.
class.
Yes, sir.
I
They've
know
spread the
what-
room
yeah.
apart, and now they're kind of putting it back together as a lab.
Thank you. I was just trying to visualize in my head which class, but when you said robotics, I knew exactly what
Yes,
you
sir.
were talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. All right, 12.2 CACI task order number 2-134, Okaloosa County School District Bosch district-wide CCTV upgrade project, presented by Mr. Dustin Keith, specialist, seat management, and recommended by the superintendent. All right, moving down to section 13. Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
No report today.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chambers, your business, sir.
Yes, sir. Just have a few things. First of all, yesterday there was an event at Northwest Florida State College, the Florida Career Pathways. So it was interesting. There was a group there from the Florida Department of Education, the CTE department head, Career Source was there, the Economic Development Council, and the neat piece was, as you know, the governor by 2030 wants Florida to be #1 in the nation as it pertains to CTE. And pathways is important because the school district is a big part of that. So starting from our elementary, moving into our middle and high school, the CTE pathways that we have for kids, just like we kind of even heard today with Crestview, the pathways that we have for kids as they go through our school system, but then eventually go to college or into the career workforce. So there's a very strong concerted effort in Florida from the school systems to the workforce to have the strong pathways for our kids and for our economy. It was interesting sitting there listening to the Department of Education, did a great job talking about CTE, but then there was also a panel from EDC and others just really talking about the importance of these pathways as they move towards our local economy. So I was proud when you think about the CTE courses that we have. Phenomenal courses. I think we've talked about the advanced manufacturing program. That's something that's going to create an even stronger pathway as we go towards the dual enrollment piece with Northwest Florida State, and then into the ability to have manufacturing here in our local economy. So a lot of great things were occurring there. It was a regional event, so Walton County and some others were there as well, but I was proud to see what was going on. Also, as you know, today in essence is the last day of the school year, and I do want to thank our teachers, our staff, our administrators, students for all that they have done over the course of this year. As you know, in education, it's a rewarding business and it's a tough business, but it's the rewards that make all the difference. And of course, with graduation just ending, we see the fruits of the labor of everybody. So I was excited about that. Some of you, and I'll say this piece briefly because some of you may also touch on it. We had a retirees lunch, so I was very proud to be a part of that. And the last thing I would like to say, those schools who had the graduations, as you know, the hard work that goes into making sure that goes off flawlessly, they did an absolutely great job. And I'll say Fort Walton Beach, they have the best breeze in the district. So I was excited to be there. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent.
I do have a question.
Yes,
for
sir.
Superintendent.
Sure.
Just looking at the field trips here, okay, normally this is just a process that we go through without really asking questions, but I do have one. The Crestview trip to Europe. Now, I'm noticing that the date is like next week. Okay, so I'm a little concerned that it came so late. What would have happened if for those students if we hadn't approved this today? So is there more of a like I see above where they're planning a trip, the Big Red Machine is planning a trip in 2021.
Yes.
So they're getting ahead of the game. So do they know that they probably need a little bit more lead time on those? Is there?
So they do, and as you know, the lead time is critical, and sometimes when that does not happen, then we do have a conversation with the particular school, reminding them of the importance of the lead time.
Right.
But as you can imagine, with a trip of this magnitude, there's a lot of excited kids going
Yeah.
forward, but we do remind them
Okay.
it's important to remember those deadlines.
All right.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Bryant. Okay, so now we, of course, move to board members' announcements. And there is an agenda item here, though, and that's 15.1, and be designation of school board members to serve as a legislative liaison and alternate on the Florida School Boards Association Legislative Committee. Mr. Bryant has been working there in that capacity for us, and I think I understand that you...
Yes, sir. I will be honored to serve again, but since we do have two new school board members on board, I mean, I enjoy doing what I do, and I don't mind sharing the responsibilities, of course. But if you all are interested, I don't have a problem with that. But I will tell you the one thing that you do, if you become the main person, is you get all the emails, all the things that are sent to us every day. But I would be honored to serve again. But as school board members, we do have the right as individuals to go over there and advocate on our own. Basically, we're just the liaison, so I report back to y'all when things are going on. Like next week, we'll be in Tampa for their annual conference. Mr. Chambers, I believe, will be there too. So for the superintendent.
So I think what we're saying is that if you would like to do that, just express some interest. And
I'll be your alternate if you want
well,
to retain that.
okay, I'm sure that Mr. Destin feels the same way, but
I
I
think the
don't
last
want
go-around,
I don't
Mr.
want to
Destin
speak for
and
him.
I think he
Mr.
did
Walker
well.
both said,
Yeah.
Tim, I think you'll be it. So I didn't think I had a say. You know.
So we can make that proposal
Oh.
also Monday night. But if you would like to serve in the capacity of Mr. Bryant is serving, then you just need to indicate your interest, and probably Monday night would be a good time to do that. You don't have to.
But if not, I would be honored to continue to serve in the position. I really
I know
don't
you-
mind. I enjoy
You
it.
enjoy it.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. And then we move on to board members' announcements, and so, Ms. Evancheck, let me start with you today.
Great,
and then-
thank you,
Sure.
thank you. First of all, today is D-Day, 75th anniversary of that, and we want to recognize that today. It's an important day in our country's history, and so that's why I put a little red on today. The other thing is, Mr. Bryan, I know this is actually your school, but if you don't mind, I'm going to point out that you and I were over at Bob Sykes Elementary Friday. They turned 60, and we celebrated with them out with Principal Vicki Hayden and their crew. Terrific music presentation. A little warm on the lawn, but we enjoyed that. And as I think most people know, that school is named in honor of renowned late Congressman Robert L.F. Sykes, very well known from our area. So that was a great time. And again, yesterday, the retiree, that kind of sums it all up. We graduated kids last week and then sent off our retirees. But what I liked hearing yesterday is many of them are saying, you're still going to see me. I'm going to be up there volunteering, and that really adds to that. The other thing is that I'd just like to kind of do a shameless plug to our board. We get invited to numerous, I've lost count of activities, so many great things, but I'm very proud to be on a board where we are so active. We are going in all the directions, including the superintendent. We're everywhere, and I think that's great. And I want to pat you guys all on the back for being out there. And sometimes we're together, and sometimes we're at opposite ends of the district. And, geographically, Okaloosa County, when you get in the car, and we were just talking before this meeting about traffic these days, it seems like it's grown exponentially with the heat. But sometimes it can be challenging to go throughout the district. But I appreciate that our board and our superintendent is active. We're out there doing all that. The other thing I want to ask Mr. Attorney is a couple of board meetings ago, we had a citizen, Ms. Moore, ask about the procedure for doing a referendum to put on a ballot about appointing a superintendent versus electing. And I've been receiving numerous emails about that, and I just wanted, all I'm asking is, will you have a report Monday night on that procedure?
Yes, ma'am, I've looked at that, and I'll be ready to give you a report Monday night. It'll be a brief report because it's laid out in the statute what you must
Okay.
do, but I'll be ready for that Monday night.
Okay, I'm just responding to numerous requests of me, and maybe other board members have gotten it too, and I just want to make sure that we're prepared to have that. It's my understanding that, I don't know if she, but some other citizens will be wanting that answer come Monday night, so thank you, sir. That's all I have.
And I'll just follow up and say that I too have received some emails. I'll give a quantity number Monday night as to how many I've actually received. And I think, and I'm not sure, and I anticipate maybe the speakers Monday night can share with us that might be an automated email. But it will be a question that certainly they can answer for us as to how that actually works. But in any case, I think we ought to anticipate those visitors based on the Facebook traffic that I've seen recently. And Mr. McInnes, you having that information for us will be helpful. And I think that from what I could tell on the header of the email, all the board members received a communication of some correspondence from Supervisor of Elections Paul Lutz regarding that particular, let's just call it citizens initiative that's being carried forward by some local citizens. What I would say is that on Monday night, what I would like to hear would be some kind of plan, if you will, that this particular group would propose in terms of educating the public, in terms of what is it in particular that they want the public to know about their particular mission, accompanied by some kind of plan to include financials. Because if I understand correctly, what this group is asking is that we vote, this school board vote, to place this matter on an upcoming election ballot. And before I vote for something like that, I certainly want to see a comprehensive plan in terms of what it is that they propose to bring forward, how they propose to educate voters. I think we probably already know what their is, but I would like to see that so that before we were asked to vote, to put something on to task the voters with, that there be some understanding of what it is that and how it is that they propose to educate. Notice I didn't say convince. I
Right.
said educate the voters. Anything else about that particular item?
No, that's why I'm glad that Mr. McInnes will have that for us, so we can have that information to start us off and everything.
Well, and I might just add that I was at a particular meeting yesterday where an individual was allowed to take a straw vote or straw ballot, if you will. I would estimate there were about 50 people in the room. I did not see a single hand raised when the question was posed, would you be in support of a different method of obtaining a superintendent? Another individual said she saw 2 hands out of the big group who were there. So if that's any indication, and these were members made up of people all across the district, I don't see it getting that kind of support. However, I'm very interested to hear what they're going to say. And I will say, I can give you a quantitative amount of emails that I received on the topic, because I looked at how many emails I got about STP, how many I got about that topic, and about another topic as well. I had 10 to me on that topic.
Did they all look the same?
They were identical. They, in fact, looked copy-pasted to me,
Okay. All right.
as they did on another topic as well.
Okay, well, you know, the fact that someone sends an automated
That's
email
fine.
at least does indicate
Right,
some
sure.
interest. And it's just something that we'll have to discuss, and if I understand correctly, but again, we would have to have, and Mr. McInnes, I think you'd probably talk to Mr. Lutz about this, there may be a cost associated with the ballot measure, and certainly I would be interested in knowing how this group proposes to pay for that. It would be part of the cost of doing business, I guess.
I thought that if it was going to be already on an election that was planned and just added, there wouldn't be a cost. That's why I wanted to hear.
I said there may be.
Yeah, I
And-
wasn't
and-
sure, yeah.
And I'm not real sure about the particular email that we all received from Mr. Lutz, but I thought I saw a number in there, if it was on a general election
Mm-hmm.
type ballot, as opposed to some significant numbers if it was on a mail-out ballot or something along those lines. And I don't think, Mr. Attorney, that you were copied on that, but
And I haven't looked into the supervisor of elections role in all of this. I was just tasked with looking at the statute.
That's
for the
right.
school board as to what your actions would be, but I certainly can communicate with Mr. Lutz if I need to.
You don't want to inherit the supervisor of elections legalities, right? Is that what I hear you saying? I don't blame you.
Well, I think, is that the same one that had Commissioner Fountain on there too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, because I was
Yes.
trying to think, I didn't remember getting one exactly from Mr. Lutz, but.
It was
And evidently,
at
the
bottom.
commission, the county commission has a piece of this?
Right.
Right, okay.
Right. They would have, the school board would have to adopt a resolution that in turn would go to the county commissioners. And I'll leave all that up to Mr.
Yeah.
McInnes, because I don't want to get the legalities messed up.
Gotcha.
But that's right, Mr. Vancheck. Okay, so that's 15, board members. Dr. Kelly, would you please, do you have something?
Well, I was just going to tack on to what Ms. Tu said, that I in fact have a daughter who's in the medical business due to the internship and externship program that was at Crestview High School a number of years ago. A little bit different than this one, but due to those extraordinary programs that we have, like Ms. Branscome's and Ms. Tu were talking about, we are enabling our students to go out and be productive in all kinds of ways. And to add on to that even further, we now have we were talking about the traffic in Destin and Fort Walton Beach, and the immediate uptick in that with the let out of school. We have programs now in hospitality and tourism industry, which I think will feeding in very well to our economy right now, especially in the summer months. So I think all of those are huge things that we're doing to feed into what Mr. Chambers was saying about the school to work programs and the emphasis by our own governor. So that's another point of pride for our district.
That's right. That's right. All right, thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Bryant?
Just to follow up, that's what Miss Ivanchek said about the 60th anniversary of Bob Sykes. So I have a story to tell you real quick. So when I first moved to Crestview, I made the mistake of saying Sykes Elementary. I was quickly corrected that it's Bob Sykes Elementary. So that's my little story with Bob Sykes. But it was great. It was a great program,
It was.
and it was hot. But it was great to see the kids do all the 50 songs and all that. So you're
Yeah,
getting
I want to
new-
tell you that when they brought out some hula hoops, because they were doing 50s, Mr. Bryant and I made a pact real quick.
Yeah.
That we weren't going up there. Unfortunately, we were not asked to do the hula hoop,
Yeah.
but it was a great music thing going back to the 50s.
Right. And also to follow up on the graduation ceremonies, I was honored to attend the Niceville graduation ceremony on Thursday night, and we had a nice breeze there. It was a really nice breeze, but a great ceremony. I was glad to be able to attend that. And on Friday, Miss Lightbourne and I, we had a great time, didn't we? We did 2 graduations in a matter of an hour and a half. It seemed like 2 hours, and I think Miss Lightbourne is glad she didn't want to ride with me up to Laurel Hill and back, because you know we got there. But I want to thank Miss Lightbourne for joining me that night. We had a great time. Laurel Hill had a great ceremony, and Crestview, we walked right on stage as they were getting ready to start everything. So it was great, and all the schools, I'm sure, did a great job. But Dustin and Eric and all those folks who did the live streaming, what a great job. I can't wait to hear some of the numbers that we get back from how many countries we're seeing and how many states we're seeing. Your point, we already know that?
So we actually have some of that information.
Okay, yeah, let's share
great.
that.
I wanna hear that.
I heard last year we had 30-something countries, 47 states, so.
We had almost as many this year. The total views by Monday morning was just about 5,000.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
D-Day is today, and so we've got all our servicemen and women around the world and across the country. And so for them and their parents, grandparents, to be able to check in and view the graduations is really special. So, but you're right, Mr. Bryant. Eric and Dustin are kind of head up that team, but we've got a lot of folks who work all during the day at the schools up at MIS, and they go out and practice and put on these graduation streams at night. So I appreciate them all, and I, at some point, like to bring them up and recognize them in front of you guys.
Sure.
Great.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Anything else? Mr. Bryant?
No, that's everything. Thank you, sir.
Just
Yeah.
one more thing. So the top school in terms of views was Choctawhatchee High School. Just so you know.
Go Big Green.
Well, I would also add, Superintendent, that there was a pretty good breeze at Choctawhatchee graduation night, and that was very helpful, and someone heard me because they did turn on the air conditioning. It felt like anyway.
There you go.
All right. So that's all we have in terms of this particular item. If you look through your agenda, the last particular item there will be, again, public comment, and then we move into adjournment. Is there anything else, board members or colleagues, that you'd like to bring up at this point? Superintendent, anything?
No, sir.
Mr. Attorney, we're good as far as you know? Staff, we're okay? All right, so we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.